We're here at the Greenback Museum with Cindy Bennington, and if you will introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the museum.
Okay. As you said, I'm Cindy McCollum Benefield, and I've been a resident of Greenback for about 9 years now. However, I grew up coming to Greenback every Sunday of my life because this is where my family is from on my paternal side. The McCollum family, in fact, I live in the house my great-grandfather built, and I have an interest in things historic, and my address is actually Cabe Road, and Betty Cabe Carroll was the person who was most instrumental in getting this museum started. There was a community club that was formed years and years ago, but in 2004 they realized that a lot of the old timers, so to speak, were not going to be with us for that long. Although my grandmother lived to 105, a lot of longevity, and a lot of people in this area seem to have longevity. But we didn't want to lose the local color and the history, and while people could still tell us about who was in this particular old picture, Betty and a group started putting all that together. So the museum, the Historical Society in Greenback, was formed to support the museum beginnings, and Betty Carroll, Bobby Anderson, Paul Bailey. Paul Bailey was probably the person most instrumental in doing the work, the most important work of this museum, which is our 3 scrapbooks. The first one is from 1800 to 1900. It talks about all the communities within the Greenback area of Loudoun County, as well as the first families. And that's something that we're just now really trying to focus on, is people that have done their genealogies to bring those in. But here in the museum, we basically just have artifacts that have been donated by local residents. Many people do come in to try to find out about their forebears a little bit, but things that have come from past times that people were willing to donate. Some things are donated, some things are on loan. Being a farming community, lots of old farm implements. Here we have old kitchen things, ironing board. As we kind of go around today, things might not be in apple pie order because we've just had our annual quilt show. It was the 9th one this year, and quilting, of course, was a very important part of early settlers' lives, that they made use of everything from feed sacks to whatever to keep themselves warm during the winter. That they were certainly a very utilitarian group. Obviously, agriculture was the biggest thing in this area, but quite the booming area at one time. I have love letters back and forth from my grandparents because mail ran twice a day in Morganton, and so there was the railroad, and before Tellico Dam, the little T ran by, and there was a lot of river traffic that actually went all the way down the Mississippi to the Gulf. So at one point there was lots and lots going on here.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, we've just had our quilt show here, so we've got some, and that's why everything's not perfectly staged at this point, but an old wedding ring one here, but most people have picked them up. That it just ended this last week. But we do have lots of old clothing, that old dress that's quite interesting. I'll have to show you one thing that I think it's kind of, because it's from my family. This is the wedding vest of my great-great-grandfather. He wore it in both 1858 and 1874, and I don't think I could even begin to get into it. He was a teensy little man, evidently, but and I love that the provenance is handwritten from somebody way back. And then a wonderful old, this is from the Kerr family. It was a cape, and the lace that was just so intricate, and the beading and door. interesting home ec class at Greenback at one point with all the people are actually identified on the back of this one. We need to get that
What
one.
year?
23, 1923. So we have some that are older, but we actually have a pretty good collection of old advertising vans, and this one was from Greenback, from the John R. Best store. So pretty interesting. And it says you will find courteous treatment. Since this used to be the drugstore, there are lots of just sundry items that came from the drugstore, from Persian eye black mascara to little, somebody had been traveling, it's got an airplane on it, but a little compact blue black ink things. But these are some shoes that were made in Cleveland, Tennessee, but look at how narrow the foot was. So obviously lady of leisure, not a spread out foot from working in the fields, but Cleveland, Tennessee, and they still have the price on it, $4.49. Greenback made the cover of Progressive Farmer in 1960 at a square dance, and I can identify several people in the community, that are still. It has John Clark, Paula Scales, Don Fugit, Jen Pope, Jack Gillenwater, Bill Eddington, DeVault, who were Tom Prater, and Gail Disney, and Dorothy Miller is some of the people that are in this. Oh, I bet that's Gail back here. I do cover. This month's cover shows a group of young farmers and homemakers enjoying a square dance at the annual folk festival at the University of Tennessee. For more about these rural revels, see Romaine Smith's article on page 52. The fiddler is Sam Green, well-known Loudoun County, Tennessee country musician. Charlie McCall, Loudoun County agent, is plucking the guitar. So it does identify those two. Okay. We do have quite a number of arrowheads on display that have been loaned by Floyd Banks Jr., and some of you might be familiar with the Greenback Castle that he has built. But I think that the way that he has turned his collection into folk art is interesting. This one's always been eye-pleasing to me in that he's used the arrowheads standing up as trees and turns them sideways to be fish. So I think that's pretty clever. And then eagles, of course, an important Indian icon, the horse, stars, and a lot of, as in most folk art, these are just old window panes that he's used to frame them. Some of the more fine points are in this particular one, and at the front we have another one where he spelled out Cherokee, which is the school's mascot. Okay, this is a 100% wool coverlet that was probably loomed on a loom very similar to this, most likely not this particular one, but the James Isaac Messler family donated this. But this was a very typical local craft that people brought with them from Wales, Ireland, in the various patterns, and most likely the sheep were raised on their farm. They carded it. We've got spinning wheels, flax tethers up front that would show how they were done. But the width of the loom determined how wide it was, so this has been pieced in the middle to make it the width that it is. But that was an early local craft. Homemade toy. the Heritage of Greenback, Tennessee Historic Scrapbook. This is the first one. It goes from 1800 to 1900. The seal of Greenback shows our community building and our old depot, two of the iconic buildings. Betty Carroll, as I said, was the person that was most instrumental in getting this going, and this is just a wealth of information. It goes through the early settlements. Morganton is no longer existent because of the damming of the Little T, but you do see old school pictures from Morganton. Mary Cruz and her parents here. Of course, Morganton is underwater now. The Quakers had a lot to do with the settling of this area, particularly over closer to Unisha. The Tellico Blockhouse, Brick Mill. It goes through it. Then probably one thing that most of our clients that come in look at is for their early families. So it's organized well, it's alphabetized by last name so people can come in and look for. Of course, we're starting with the Alexanders. That was a prominent early name. They were in Meadow. This picture's from about 1895. Then it moves to the Anderson family. We have lots of pictures of documents of the family. So people who want to do genealogy or to search for forebears will find it most interesting. I have a second cousin that I've only recently come to know, and his idea is that he's related to everyone in this area and has basically been able to prove it. And he and his wife, this is Lanny McCollum and Anita, do grave concerns where they've gone around and start cleaning up family cemeteries that people no longer maintain. And TVA owns a lot of the land where these cemeteries are, and many of them you have to have keys to get back to it. And Lanny had to go through a great deal of red tape, but they said, well, I've looked at the law and you can't deny a family member access to old cemeteries, and so he has keys. He's got full access to everything in Loudoun County now because he can prove, because it was a small community. That's one thing that's interesting about Greenback, is that it's always been pretty insular and people have come back to their roots, and you know, I'm probably an example of that after 20 years in Nashville and then retiring back here. Speaking of, there's Lanny McCollum right now. Hey Lanny, I was just saying how you have set out to prove that we're related to everybody in Loudoun County. Therefore, you can go work on any of the cemeteries that you want to.
It's true. It's true.
It's kind of fluid, but for the past year, we've been open on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, 10 to 2. We do it on Tuesdays because right across the street in the historic depot, we have a farmer's market going on. So it's really, we've gotten more foot traffic because of that, and then on the weekends, Friday and Saturday, and many people come and combine it with a visit to our famous diner next door, the home of the honeyman. So